Quick demo of this Angular 4 tutorial. This is a step-by-step tutorial on how to implement CRUD operations in Angular 4 application using ASP.NET Web API. This is the final output of this tutorial. Here we have implemented CRUD operations based on some employee details like first name, last name, position, employee code, and office. In order to insert a new employee record, you can do this. Now click on submit. Here you can see the notification message, new record added successfully. Here you can see the newly added record for James Thomas. In order to update an employee record, you can click on this pencil button here. Then it will populate the corresponding employee details inside this form. Now I want to edit the employee name. Instead of James Thomas, I want James Jones. Employee code will be JJ. Now click on submit. So here we have updated the record. Here you can see the updated employee list. If you want to delete a record, you can click on this trash icon here. Then it will ask for confirmation. Are you sure to delete this record? Click on OK. So here we have deleted the record successfully. I'm sure you will find this tutorial helpful for your upcoming Angular 4 projects. So please watch till the end of this video tutorial. What's up YouTube? Welcome to .NET Mob. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to implement CRUD operations in Angular 4 application with the help of Web API project and SQL Server. Before starting this video tutorial, I would like to ask you a favor. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video. If you are new here, please be subscribed to this channel .NET Mob. In order to implement CRUD operations like insert, update, and delete, we have to create ASP.NET Web API project. For that, click on New Project here, then select Web under Visual C#, then select ASP.NET Web Application. Name your project here. I will name it as Web API. Then select the location where you want to save this application. Then click on OK. Select Web API, keep other options as it is. Click on OK. So here we have a brand new ASP.NET Web API project. Before continuing with this project, we have to create a SQL Server database for this application. For that, let me open my Management Studio here. Let me create a new database. For that, right click on Databases, then click on New Database. I will name this database as Web API DB. Click on OK. So here we have the newly created database. Inside that, I am going to add a new table. For that, right click on Tables, then New Table. We will be doing all these CRUD operations on employee details such as employee ID, first name, last name, employee code, position, and office. So I am going to create a new table to store all these employee details. First column will be employee ID. It's of the type integer. Then first name as varchar 50. Then last name as varchar 50, employee code, EMP code as varchar 50, then position as varchar 50, and office. It's of the type varchar 50. Now I will set this employee ID as the primary key for this table. I want to set the same column as the identity specification for this table. For that, select the column. Then go to column properties, then expand this identity specification, set this is identity as yes. So this column will start from 1 and increment by 1 upon new record insertion. All these increment operation will be done by SQL Server. In that way, this employee ID column will maintain its unique constraint by SQL Server itself. You don't have to insert values into this column. SQL Server will take care of that. In order to save this table, you can use the shortcut Ctrl S, or you can click on this save button here. I will name this table as employee. Click on OK. Newly created table can be seen under this tables node here. Now I am going to add radio.NET entity data model for this table employee into our Web API project here. For that, right click on models, then add new item, select data from the left panel, then select radio.NET entity data model. I will name this model as DB models. Click on add, select generate from database, then click on next, click on new connection. Here we need to provide the SQL Server details. For me, it is local /SQLE 2012. Then select the database from this drop down here. I will select this one web API DB, then click on OK. After creating this entity model, there will be a class with this name. We need to create an object of this class in order to interact with database. So let me change this class name to DB model. Click on next. Click on next. From this window, we have to select the database objects that we need to add in our entity model. I will select this employee table, then click on finish. So here we have added entity data model for the table employee. Diagrammatic representation of employee table looks like this. Inside this entity data model, DB models, you can see a file, employee.cs file. Inside that, we have properties corresponding to employee table column. We will be using this class employee as a model for web API controls. So let's create a new web API controller. Before that, we have to rebuild our solution. Right click on solution, then rebuild solution. In order to create a new web API controller, right click on controllers folder, then add controller. Then I will select this option, web API 2 controller with actions using entity framework. Click on add. Then I will name this controller as employee controller. Then I will select employee class as a model class. Here it is. And for data context class, we will select DB model. This is the class we were talking about while we create entity data model. We will create an object of this class in order to interact SQL Server database using entity framework. Click on add. Inside the controller, we can see some web API verb actions in order to do operations like insert, update, and delete. So let's look each of them first. First of all, we have get employees. It's of the type get. With this, we will retrieve all the employees inside our employee table. After that, we have get employees. It is used to retrieve details of employee for a given employee ID like this. For this project, we don't need this method, so let me get rid of this. After that, we have put employee method. It is used to update a given employee record. Okay, first of all, we will check whether model state is valid or not. We don't need this validation here. We will be doing all validation in our Angular 4 application. So let me get rid of this and keep an eye on this HTTP method. It is put. Then we have post employee. It's of the type post. We use this method to insert new employee records. Inside the function, you can see the same if clause to check whether model is valid or not. We will do these validations in our Angular 4 application. Let me get rid of this. And here is the final method, delete employee. It's of the type delete. This method is used to delete an employee with given ID. Inside this employee controller, we have done all DB interactions like insert, update, and delete using entity framework codes, which is generated by MVC scaffolding mechanism. First of all, we have created an object of DB context class, DB model, as DB. Inside this get employees method, we have retrieved all the employees from employee table using this employees collection. And then we have done update operation using this method put employee. We will update the employee with given ID inside this parameter, and updated details of employee is given inside this object. First of all, we will check this ID and employee ID from this object are same or not. If they are not same, we will return a bad request like this. If they match each other, we will set the entry state of the employee as modified. Finally, we just need to call this save changes method. It will update the employee with these updated employee details. If anything went wrong, we will catch the exception inside this catch block. First of all, we will check whether there is an employee with given ID using this function employee exists here. If there is no employee with this given ID, we will return not found. Otherwise, we will throw the exception. And from this method, we don't have to return any data. That's why we return status code no content. And using this method post employees, we will insert a new employee into the employee table. For that, we will add the employee object into this employees collection. Finally, we just need to call this function save changes. Finally, we will return an URI of the newly created employee using this function create@root. We don't need this URI, even though I am not going to remove this return statement. In order to delete a given employee, we will call this method delete employee. We have a parameter ID here.
First of all, we will find the employee for the given ID and we will assign that employee object into this employee. If there is no employee with given ID, then employee object will be null. In that case, we will return not found. Otherwise, we will call this remove function in order to delete the employee. Finally, we just need to call this save changes method. Finally, we will return the deleted employee object back to the caller. Finally, we have overridden the dispose method from the base class, which is API controller. This dispose method is defined inside this API controller. We have inherited from API controller into this employee controller. This is what we do in all web API controllers. This dispose method is called when system is going to destroy this object, and thereby this dispose method gives an opportunity to release the resources that we have used inside this employee controller. Inside this employee controller, we have created an object of db context class db, and we need to release or dispose that object. That is what we have done inside this dispose method. Finally, we will call the original dispose method to do the rest. Now we have implemented all CRUD operations insert, update and delete in this web API project. Now we can create Angular 4 application. From that application, we will consume this web API project. So let's look how we can do that. In order to create the Angular 4 application, I will use my Visual Studio Code editor. I want to create the application inside this project folder. This is where we created our web API project. Let me copy this folder path from here. Open my Visual Studio Code editor, then click on File, Open Folder, then paste the path here. Hit Enter, select the folder. In order to create Angular 4 application, I will use the Angular CLI command. You can run Angular CLI command from your command prompt, or you can use the integrated terminal from this Visual Studio Code editor. For that, go to View, then click on Integrated Terminal here. In order to create an Angular 4 application, you can use this command ng new then application name. I will name this application as Angular CRUD, then hit enter. It will create a brand new Angular 4 application and install required Angular packages. So it will take some time to complete this process, so please be patient. So here we have created the Angular 4 application Angular CRUD. In order to run this application, you can use this Angular CLI command ng serve then --open, hit enter. Sorry, we have to navigate into the project folder, that is Angular CRUD. For that, you can do this cd Angular CRUD, hit enter. Now we can run this CLI command ng serve --open, hit enter. So it will open our application in the port 4200, and this is how the application looks like. Now I am going to add required components, model and service classes into this application. For that, we need one more terminal, so click on this plus button here. As you can see here, my folder path is too long. In order to hide this long path, I will do this prompt then $symbol, hit enter. Currently we are inside this folder with name project. Now we need to navigate into this folder Angular CRUD. For that, we have to use this command cd then Angular CRUD. In order to create an Angular component, you can use this CLI command ng then generate component then component name. First of all, I am going to create a component with name employees. In short, you can use C for component and G for generate. Then hit enter. Newly created component can be seen inside this folder here, employees. Inside the folder, we have one style sheet, one HTML file, one TypeScript file for the component. And here we have a file with extension spec.ts. It is for test purpose. We don't need this test file for this application. So let me delete this file. When we create components using this CLI command, it will add or import the component inside this app module. Here we imported the employees component, and here we have added this employees component inside this declarations array. Apart from this employees component, we need two more components inside this employees folder. For that, right click on this employees folder, then open in terminal. In order to create the Angular component, I will use this command ng g for generate, c for component, then component name employee. Hit enter. Then we need one more component with name employee -list. Hit enter. So here we have created two components, employee and employee list. Let me remove this test file from these two components. Now we need to create model and service class. For that, I will create one folder inside this employees folder, new folder. It will be shared folder. Inside that, we have to create the model and service classes. For that, right click on it, then open in terminal. In order to create a service class, you can use this command ng, then g for generate and s for service. Then we need to provide the service class name. In this case, it will be employee service. So I will give employee. Hit enter. So here we can see the newly created employee service class inside this file employee.service.ts. Here we have the employee service. It is already decorated with injectable because in most of the case, service classes are used to inject inside Angular components. Apart from this service file, here we have a file with extension spec.ts. It is for test purpose. So let me remove this. Now we need a model class. In order to generate a model class in Angular applications, we don't have a specific Angular CLI, even though we have a command to generate a class. It will be like this, ng, then g for generate, then class. I will name this class as employee.model. Hit enter. So here we have the newly created TypeScript file for model class. It is named as employee.model.ts. This is the recommended way to name model class files as per official Angular documentation. Let me remove this suffix .model from here. Now inside this employee class, we need to add properties for each column inside our employee table, like we have done inside this web API model class employee. For that, let me copy these properties from here and pasting here. Obviously, there are some changes while declaring properties in C# and TypeScript. So we have to edit these declarations as per TypeScript syntax. Employee ID is of the type integer. Corresponding data type will be number in TypeScript. So let me remove this public int from here. And for first name, it's of the type string. Rest of the properties are string. So let me copy this and pasting for remaining properties here. Now let me remove this public string from here. So here we have done with employee model class. Okay, now it's time to design this application. I will be using CSS framework Bootstrap for designing this application. So let me go to this website getbootstrap.com. I'm going to use this version 4.0.0 beta version 2. Now click on get started. Here we have the required CDN path. First of all, I'm going to copy this CDN path for the CSS file, and I will copy this CSS file inside this index.html here. I will paste this style sheet reference inside this head part. Now let's copy the script files. Now we have three script files for this Bootstrap. One is for jQuery and one is for Purpose.js. It is used to position elements inside a website. And here we have the Bootstrap script file. Let me copy the CDN path for these three script files and pasting inside this index.html here before the body close tag. As you know, the default component of an Angular application is app component. Corresponding TypeScript file will be this one, app component.ts, and here we have the corresponding HTML. Inside that we have some default HTML code which is responsible for displaying these much HTML elements inside this website. So I'm going to start from this HTML file itself. I'm going to get rid of this default HTML. Instead of that, I need a div element with class container. So this is a shortcut to create div element with class container. You might have seen this shortcut with mnet extension, but mnet extension or abbreviations are already installed inside this Visual Studio by default. We don't have to install mnet extension into Visual Studio, it is already there. If I hit tab, we have a div element with class container. So this shorthand method will help us to design the application very easily, and we can concentrate on our application logic. Now inside this container div, I want to display employees component. For that, let me open this employees component, and here we have the corresponding selector. Let me copy this and paste in here, then hit tab. So here we are going to display employees component, and here is the corresponding HTML employees component.html. Inside that we have a default paragraph. Instead of that, we need a div. Inside that we have an h2 header with class jumbotron, which is from Bootstrap jumbotron. Then for background color we have bg secondary, and for text color we have text white. Inside this header we will enter our application name, which is employee register. I want to align this employee register in middle. For that, we can add style tag here. Style is equal to text align is center. Let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. So here we have a clean header for this application. Now beneath this header, I want to show two divs using grid system. For that, first of all, we need a div with class row. Inside that, we need two divs, div with class called md6. Like this, we need one more div. So let me copy this and paste in below that. Inside the first div, we want to show this component, employee component. For that, we can copy this selector from here, app-employee. Let me copy this and pasting inside this first div, then hit tab. Inside the second div, I want to show the component employee list. So let me copy its selector from its component. Let me copy this selector and pasting inside this second div here. Then hit tab. Let me save this and back to the application. So here we have the default HTML from these two components, employee and employee list. Inside the first div, we want to show a form to insert or update employees. Inside the second div, that means employee list component, we want to show all the employees that we have inserted inside a table. So let's look how we can do that. First of all, I will create this form inside this employee component for insert and update operation. Before designing this employee form, I would like to show the structure of our application. This is almost similar to the previous video tutorial in which we have discussed how to implement CRUD operations in Angular 4 with Firebase. First component will be this one, employees component, which is the parent component for these two components, employee and employee list. Inside this employee component, we will deal with operations like insert and update. With this employee list component, we will list all of the employees inside a table, and we will do the delete operation inside this component. And here we have the shared folder. Inside that, we have employee service and employee model class. Now we are going to inject this employee service inside this parent component employees, and thereby we can access the same instance of this injected employee service from this parent inside these child components, employee and employee list. That means we will have an employee array inside this employee service When we insert employees from this employee component, we will update that employee array. Since we are sharing same instance of this employee service from parent to this child component employee and employee service, updated employee array can be accessed from this employee list. So that is the benefit of sharing same service instance from parent component to child components. If you can't understand what I have said about this service injection, don't worry, we will see them in action. So right now we are inside this employee service. I want to import this employee model into this employee service. For that we can do this import from employee model. We need to import employee model class, which is employee. Now I want to declare a property selected employee, which is of the type employee model employee. Now we are going to inject this employee service inside this parent component, which is this one. First of all, we have to import this employee service from shared folder. For that we can do this import from shared folder, then employee service. We have to import employee service class, employee service. Now in order to inject this employee service inside this component, we just have to add this employee service inside this providers array here, employee service. And then we have to pass an object of this employee service inside this constructor, private employee service. It's of the type employee service. Now in order to use the same instance of this injected employee service inside this child component employee and employee list, we can do this. First of all, we have employee component. We have to import this employee service class here, import from shared folder. We have to add two dots here because we are inside this employee folder. First of all, we have to get out of this folder employee. For that we have added two dots here, and we have shared folder. Inside that we have this employee service. We have to import employee service class here and just add this parameter inside this constructor, employee service. It's of the type employee service class. Now we have to do the same inside this employee list component. Let me paste the import statement here, and let me copy this private parameter from here and pasting inside this employee list component. Now we can access employee service from these three components. Now I am going to design employee form inside this employee component HTML using this property selected employee. For that, first of all, we need a form with class emp form. Emp form is a custom class to style this form. Now hit tab. We don't need this action attribute here. Let me remove that. We are going to design this form using template driven approach. So first of all, I would like to add this employee form local reference, then it is equal to ng form. Now I am going to design this form using Bootstrap classes form row and form group, which is almost similar to this form here, which is under custom styles inside the forms component in Bootstrap documentation. I have given this link in video description. If you have any doubt, you can go through this documentation. First of all, we need a div with class form row. Inside that we need two divs of equal width. So div with classes form -group, then call md6. Like this, we need one more div. So let me copy this and pasting below that. Inside this first div, we need a text box for first name. So we can do this input with class form control, which is from Bootstrap. And we don't need this type attribute. By default, it will be text. And then we need to set this name attribute as first name. After that, I will set local reference first name is equal to ng model. Now I am going to bind employee service property selected employee into this form. For that we will use two-way data binding. Ng model is equal to, now we have to provide the property first name from this employee model. Okay, currently we are inside this employee component. Here we have injected employee service as employee service. So we can do this employee service dot then selected employee, which is inside this service class here. Let me copy that and paste in here, and then we need first name. Like this we can add text box for last name inside the second div. So let me copy this and pasting inside this div, and we have to replace this first name with last name. Instead of first name we need last name. So I'm going to edit these properties here. We want to show a text box for position. For that we don't need a form row div, we just need a form group div. Inside that we can add text box like we have done for first name and last name. Let me copy and paste in here. Instead of last name we have position. Let me edit the corresponding attributes with position and position. After this position text box, we need to show text box for employee code and office in a same row. For that we can copy this form row div for first name and last name and pasting here, and we want to change corresponding properties according to emp code and office. So let me edit these properties here. Finally we have office. Now in order to work this template driven form, we have to import forms module into this application. For that, open app-module.ts file. Here we have to import forms module. For that we can do this import from Angular forms module. We have to add the same class forms module inside this imports array here. So let me save all of these modifications here. Here we have the form to add new employees. It is better to add placeholders for identifying these text box purpose. So I'm going to add placeholders for these text boxes. Now we have to add two buttons for submit and reset. For that I will copy this form row div, since we need to add these buttons in a same row. Let me copy this and paste in below that. For the first button, submit button, we need col md8, and for reset button we just need 4 grid columns. Instead of this input element we need a button with class btn and then btnlg to enlarge this button. Then we have btn block so that this button will take the full width of col md8. And then we have the last class, which is btn info, to add background and foreground color. Hit tab. So here we have the button text will be submit. Like this we need one more button for reset button. Let me replace this input with this button, and this button is of type submit, and this is a normal button, so type will be button. Instead of this btn info class we need a different class, which is btn secondary, to add some different background and foreground color, and text will be reset. Now I would like to integrate phone over some icons into these two buttons. So here we have the phone over some icons, and here is the CDN path for this phone over some icon. So let me copy the CDN path from here, and we can add this path inside this index.html link. Then href will be this one, Let me save this. Now let me select an icon for the submit button. For that I will search for save here. So I will select this one, floppy o, I tag, then class will be far, then far hyphen floppy dash o, then hit tab, and for reset button I will use this one. If I search repeat here, I will get this button, so I will use this one, far repeat. For that we can do this I tag with class far and far hyphen repeat. Hit tab. Let me save this and back to the application here. Now we have done with designing this employee form. Now I would like to add some CSS rules into this application. For that I will use this file style.css. Inside this file we can add CSS rules for our entire application. So let me paste some CSS rules here. Let me save this and back to the application here. Now we have added some background color for this employee form using this custom class emp-form. First of all, I'm going to implement reset operation for this form. For that, I'm going to define a function reset form, and we have a parameter here form which is of the type ngForm. This class is to be imported from forms module. Import from Angular forms. We are going to import ngForm class. First of all, we are going to reset this form using the default reset function. After that, we will reset all of the model property. So we can do this dot employee service dot selected employee is equal to employee ID will be null. Then we have first name empty string. Like this we have 4 more properties. So let me copy this and pasting below that 4 times. This is for last name, and this one is for emp code. Then we have position and office. Let me remove this last one. Now we can call this reset form from this button click event. For that we just need to go to its HTML, then add a click event for this reset button. It will be something like this. Click is equal to reset form, and we just need to pass this form local reference. So it will be employee form. Pasting here. Let me save this and back to the application here. If I enter some text data inside these text boxes, then click on this reset button. So form reset is working. Now I want to call this same reset form function from this ng-onIt lifecycle hook. This function will be called when this component is fully loaded. So in order to call this function, we can do this dot reset form, and for this function call we don't have a parameter to pass for this parameter form. So I'm going to make this form parameter as nullable. So we just need to add an if clause before this form reset function. If form is not equal to null, then only we need to call this reset function. Now back to the application. Now I am going to add validations into this application. For that I will make these 2 text boxes, first name and last name, as a mandatory field for this form. For that we just need to add a div for those required text boxes. Div with class validation error. Inside that we have a message, this field is required. We want to show this error message only when this first name text box is invalid. So I will make use of this local reference first name dot invalid, and it should be touched. So we can use the class touched. since this is the required text box, we just need to add required attribute for this text box, required. Let me save this and back to the application here. Now I just click inside this text box first name, then click outside the text box. So here we have the error message, this field is required. Style for this error message is defined inside this global CSS here, style.css. Here we have defined the custom class validation error. In the same way, I want to make this last name text box as a mandatory field. For that, I will copy this error message div and paste it below this last name text box. Instead of first name, here we have last name, and we want to add the same attribute required here. Required. Let me save this and back to the application here. Now if I click inside this last name text box, then click outside, so here we have the validation error, this field is required. Along with this form validation, I want to make the submit button as disabled when the form as a whole is not valid. For that, we just need to add this disabled only when this employee form is not valid. So I will make use of this local reference employee form dot valid. So this disabled will be applied when this form is not valid. Let me save this and back to the application here. Now you can see that this submit button is already disabled. If I enter something inside this first name and last name text box, you can see that this submit button is enabled.
Now it's time to implement insert operation in this application by consuming this WebAPI method post employee. We will call this WebAPI method from this Angular 4 application by using HTTP module. For that, first of all, open this file appmodule.ts file. Here we have to import HTTP module. Import from Angular HTTP, and here we have to import HTTP module. Then we have to add this HTTP module inside this imports array here. Now inside this employee service class, I will define a function to call this WebAPI method, and we will call this employee service method from this form submit event. So let's look how we can do that. First of all, we have to add some import statement for classes like HTTP, then HTTP related classes, then observables and operators from RxJS. So let me copy paste the required statements here. Now we have to inject this HTTP inside this employee service. So we can do this. Private HTTP, it's of the type HTTP class. Now I'm going to define the function post employee, and for this function we have a parameter emp, it's of the type employee model class, which is employee. Now we have to call this WebAPI method post employee from this function. So we can do this dot HTTP dot post. As a first parameter, we have to pass the URL for this WebAPI method. So I will just type URL for now. As a second parameter, we have to pass the data for this WebAPI method. In this case, it is an object of employee class containing details of new employee. For that, I'm going to define a variable var body, and we are passing this employee object as a JSON string. So we can do this JSON dot stringify. Inside that we can pass this object emp. Now we can pass this body variable as a second parameter here. As a third parameter, we have to pass the request options. For that, I'm gonna add two additional variables here. First one is header options. Header options is equal to new headers. Inside that, we have to pass an object to specify the content type. Content type is JSON, so we can pass like this: application /JSON. Now the second parameter, which is request options is equal to new request options. Inside that we can pass an object like this. Method is equal to request method dot post. Then we have headers. For that we will pass these header options here. Sorry, I have misspelled options here. Let me copy this and pasting here. Now as a third parameter we can pass this variable here, request options. As a result of this post request, it will return a data of the type observable of response. So first of all we have to return the data from this post request, and in order to make use of that return data we have to convert its type from observable of response to observable of JSON. So let's look how we can do that. First of all I will return the data here, and we have to convert this observable of response into observable of JSON. So we can do this map. Inside that we will define an arrow function with parameter x dot JSON. That's it. So it will convert the observable of response to observable of JSON. Finally we have to replace this URL with the corresponding URL for this web API method post employee. For that let me run this application without debug mode. So we can use the shortcut Control F5. So currently we are running this web API project. Here is the base URL. So let me copy this and pasting here instead of URL. Now in order to call this particular web API method post employee, we have to add this URL part to the base address. So let me copy this and pasting here. Finally we are ready to consume this web API method from this Angular application. But there is a problem. This web API project will block requests from another application or project with different URL or port number. This is called cross-domain request blocking, or most often abbreviated as CORS, C-O-R-S. So let's look how we can resolve or bypass this request blocking in ASP.NET Web API project. For that we have two methods. One is using this web.config file, which is this one. It is an XML file. Inside this we can resolve the problem, or you can use the NuGet package. In this tutorial I will use a NuGet package. So select this project, then go to tools, then library package manager, then package manager console. Then copy paste the NuGet command from here. I have given this NuGet command in video description. Please copy paste from there. For now let me copy this and pasting here, then hit enter. Now installation of this package is completed successfully. Now let's look how we can use this package. Here we have the employee controller. In order to allow requests from another applications, we just need to add an attribute here. For that, first of all we have to use the namespace CORS from the installed package, which is this one, system.web.http.cors. Then add this attribute enable CORS, so it will allow requests from localhost 4200 into this employee controller. Localhost 4200 is the URL where we hosted our Angular 4 application. If you want to allow requests from all URLs, just use star here, like we have done for these headers and methods. If you are working on a big project, then it will be difficult to apply this enable CORS to all controllers. In that case, we can do this. For now, let me comment this enable CORS for this controller. Then open this folder app start. Inside that we have a file webapi.config.cs file. Inside that we can do this, and we have to add this namespace like we have done before. So this will allow requests from localhost 4200 into this project. Now let me save all of these modifications here. If you rerun this application, some of you may get this problem, could not load file or assembly, system.web.http. So here we have to run this command, NuGet command, to resolve the problem. Here we are going to reinstall WebApi.Core with same version as that of the WebApi.Cors that we have installed. Let me hit enter. So here we are going to install WebApi.Core with same version as that of WebApi.Cors. Click on yes to all. Let me run this application again. So here we have done all required configuration to consume this WebAPI project. Now we can call this employee service function post employee from this form submit event. So let's do that. For that we have to open this HTML employee component.html and let's add a submit event here. ng submit is equal to on submit. Inside the function we will pass the local reference for this form, employee form. Now we have to define this on submit function inside this component, employee component, on submit function, and here we have a parameter form which is of the type ng form. Inside the function we will call this employee service function post employee. So we can do this dot employee service dot post employee. Into this function post employee we have to pass an object of employee containing details of new employee that we can retrieve from this variable form. So we will do this form dot value contains an object of employee. Now this function post employee will return an observable of JSON or employee. Now we can subscribe to that function like this, subscribe. Inside that we have to define an arrow function with a parameter data. Function will be like this. Inside the function I just need to reset this form here. For that we can call this reset form function, this dot reset form, and we will pass an object of this form which is here. Let me paste it here. Let me save all of these modifications here. Now back to the application. Now I am going to add the first employee record. You can see that currently we don't have any record inside this employee table. Employee details will be something like this. Fiona Green. Position will be developer. Then employee code will be FG. Then office will be in London. Now click on submit. I hope it is working. Form is reset to initial state. Let me run this command once again. So here we have the record for Fiona Green. Most often we will show a notification message after save, update and delete operation. Something like new record added successfully or updated successfully or deleted successfully. In order to do that, I'm going to install this npm package ngx-toastr. So let's install this package into our Angular 4 application. For that we have to run this command. Let me copy this, then open one more terminal here. Just click on this plus button here, then navigate into our project folder, hit enter, then paste our command here, hit enter. Installation of the package is completed with successfully. As you can see here we have to install one more package which is this one, Angular animations. In my case it is already there because when we create this Angular 4 application using Angular CLI, it is already installed. If you check this file package.json file, you can see the package here, Angular animations. So I'm not going to install this package again. Now let's move to the next step. Installed packages can be seen inside this node modules folder. So we have to reference a CSS file from installed package, which is this one. It is already mentioned here, toastr.css. For that you can open this file, angular cli.json file. Here we have an array styles. Inside that we have to add the reference for this toastr.css file. So a reference for the style sheet will be something like this. Inside the node modules folder we have a folder ngx-toastr. Inside that we have this file toastr.css. Now in order to use this package, open your app module.ts file. Here we have to add an import statement for toastr module like this. Import toastr module from ngx-toastr. Now we have to add this toastr module inside this imports array like this. Toastr module dot for root. Now we can inject toastr service inside employee controller. First of all we have to add the import statement for toastr service from ngx-toastr, and we have to import toaster service. Now in order to inject this toaster service, we have to declare a private parameter inside this constructor, private toaster, which is of the type toaster service class. Now I want to show a notification message after this insert operation here. So we can do this dot toaster dot success. Then notification message will be something like this: new record added successfully. As a second parameter, we can give a title for this notification. For now, I will just give the application name, which is employee register. Since we have made modifications outside this src folder, we have to rerun this application. For that, let me go to the first terminal here, and then let's stop this application. For that, you can use this shortcut Ctrl+C, then type Y, hit enter. In order to run this application again, you can use this command ngserve:-open, hit enter. Now I'm going to add one more employee record to test whether this toaster notification is working or not. Click on submit. So here we have the notification, employee register, new record added successfully. So here we have the div for employee list component. Inside this div, I want to list all of the employees that we have inserted into employee table so far. For that, we will use an HTML table. So let's look how we can do that. Here we are inside employee service class. I want to declare an array of employee to store the inserted employees. For that, we can do this employee list. It will be an array of employee model class, which is employee. In order to retrieve all the inserted employees from employee table, we can consume this WebAPI method getEmployees. For that, I will define a new function, getEmployeeList. Here we need to call this WebAPI method getEmployees, which is of the type get. For that, we can do this dot http.get. Inside this function, we have only one parameter, which is the URL for the WebAPI method. It will be same as this one, so let me copy paste here. As a result of this get request, we will get observable of response. So here we need to convert that observable of response into employee array. We just need to call the function map. Inside that, we will define an arrow function data, which is of the type response. Inside the function, we have to return the employee array. For that, we can do this return data.json, and we have to cast this JSON object as employee array. So we can do this employee array. So after execution of this HTTP request, we will have an array of employees. So we want to assign that employee array into this variable here, employee list. For that, we will use the promise method to promise, then call the function then. Inside that, we can define an arrow function like this with variable x. Then function will be something like this. This dot employee list is equal to the array, which is this parameter x right here, which is returned from this map function. Now we can call this getEmployeesList function from our employee list component. So let's deal with that. Here we have the employee list component. Here we already injected employee service. Along with that, we want to add an import statement for employee class like this. Inside this ngOnIt lifecycle hook, we will call this employee service function getEmployeeList. For that, we can do this dot employee service dot get employee list. That's it. So this get employee list function will retrieve all the employees from our employee table and store inside this employee list array defined here. So here we can make use of this employee list array to display employees inside an HTML table. For that, open this employee list component HTML here. Here we need an HTML table, so we can do this table, and we need these classes from Bootstrap, table, then table hyphen sm, then table hyphen hover. Hit tab. Obviously inside the table we need tr elements to display rows. Here we are going to iterate through this employee list variable here. For that we can use this directive ng4 star ng4 is equal to let employee of. Inside this employee list component, here we have injected employee service class as employee service. So we have to use this parameter name. Let me copy this and pasting here inside this employee service class. Here we have a list with this name employee list. So let me copy this and pasting here. So here we are going to iterate through each element inside this employee list array. Inside the row we will have td elements for employee name and employee code. So I will do that here. Employee dot first name, then hyphen employee dot last name. So let me copy this and pasting here. Instead of first name we have last name. Then we need one more td for employee code. So let me copy this and pasting here. Instead of first name we have emp code. Let me save all of these modifications here and back to the application. So here we have the HTML table listing all of the employees that we have inserted into employee table: Fiona Green and James Jones. Now I want to add one additional column into this table in order to show the buttons for update and delete operation. So let's look how we can do that. td element, inside that we need two anchor elements, one for update and one for delete operation. Anchor tag with class btn. This is from Bootstrap. This is for edit operation or update operation. Inside this button I want to show font over some icon for pencil. So I will do this I tag, then class far, then far hyphen pencil hyphen square hyphen o. Then hit tab. Like this we need one more button for delete operation. So let me copy this and pasting below that here. This is for delete operation, so I want to change this font over some class here for hyphen trash hyphen o, and I want to add the text color as red. For that I will use this Bootstrap class text hyphen danger. Let me save this and back to the application here. So here we have added buttons for update and delete operation. Now we have done with listing employees inside this second div here. When user click on this pencil or edit button, we want to show the corresponding employee details inside this form here. After that, user can edit the employee details. If they click on this submit button, we will update the employee details. So let's look how we can do this update operation. First of all, I'm going to add a click event for this button or anchor tag for edit button. So we can do this. Click is equal to, we will call a function show for edit. As a parameter for this function, I will pass this employee object. Let me copy this and pasting here. Now we want to define this function inside the employee list component here. Show for edit, we have a parameter emp, it's of the type employee class. Then function will be something like this. We are displaying this form based on this property selected employee that you can see here, employee component HTML. So we just need to update this selected employee property with the employee object on which we have triggered this click event. So we can do this dot employee service dot selected employee is equal to emp. So here we are trying to pass a reference for this employee object into this selected employee property. So whenever we update employee details inside this form, corresponding changes can be seen inside this employee object emp here. In order to avoid that, we will pass a copy of this object into this property selected employee. For that, we can do this object.assign then emp. Let me save all of these modifications here and back to the application here. Now I am going to update this record for Fiona Green. For that, I will click on this pencil button here. So here we can see the employee details for the employee Fiona Green. We have already implemented insert operation using this form. Now we can do the update operation with the same form. For that, we have to do some additional works. So let's look what are they. We have implemented this employee form inside this HTML file employee component.html. First of all, we need to add a hidden field for employee ID, which is the primary key for the employee table. It should be there because we are using same form for insert and update operation. Based on the value of employee ID property, we can decide whether it is update or insert operation. So I'm going to add a hidden field for employee ID like this. So here we have the employee ID hidden field. Input type hidden, then name will be employee ID. Here we have the local reference and it is assigned with ng model. Here we have the two-way data binding for the employee ID property. Here we have the submit event for this employee form. Inside this event, we want to do insert and update operation based on the employee ID value. During insert operation, employee ID will be null because we are calling this reset form during ng only lifecycle hook and after any insert operation. So during insert operation, employee ID will be null. During update operation, we are assigning the corresponding employee object into this form. So employee ID will not be null. So employee ID will be an integer. So we can do the insert operation when the employee ID is null. Form dot value dot employee ID is equal to null. When employee ID is equal to null, we will do the insert operation. Else, we will do the update operation. After operations like insert, update or delete, we have to refresh this employee list. For that, I'm gonna call this employee service function getEmployeeList, which is written for refreshing this employee list here. So I'm going to call this getEmployeeList function after insert operation. For that, I will do this dot employee service dot get employee list. That's it. Inside this else part, we are going to implement update operation for the selected employee using this web API method put employees. Here we have two parameters, ID then employee object. In order to consume this web API method, I'm going to define a function inside this employee service class like we have done here for insert operation post employee. There is only few changes from this post employee function. So let me copy paste the function here, put employee. Here we have two parameters, ID then employee object. Then here we have declared three variables like we have done for this post employee function. Only difference is that here we have request method dot put instead of request method dot post. This ID parameter is passed through URL by appending this ID variable to the URL. And we have passed this employee object inside this body here. So here we made the HTTP request for update operation. It will return a data of the type observable of response, and here we will convert that observable of response to observable of JSON or object. Now we can call this put employee function inside this form submit event here. So I will copy paste the code here. So here we called put employee function by passing these two parameters, employee ID then an object of employee here. First of all, it will reset this form by calling this reset form function like we have done here. Then we will refresh this employee list to show the updated employee list by calling this function getEmployeeList. Then this will show the toaster notification record updated successfully. Now let me save all of these modifications here and back to the application. Now I am going to update this record for James here. For that you can click on this pencil button here. I want to change this James Jones to James Smith. Then I will change this employee code here as JS. Then click on submit. So here we have updated James Jones to James Smith. You can see the toaster notification here. Finally, here we are going to implement delete operation using this WebAPI method delete employee. Here we have a single parameter ID for the corresponding employee ID. First of all, I'm going to define delete employee function inside this employee service class like this. Delete employee. Here we have a single parameter ID. It's of the type number. Then we will make the HTTP request of the type delete. Then we need to pass the URL like this. This is the corresponding URL for this WebAPI method delete employee. Along with that, we have to pass the ID for the corresponding employee. So here we have appended ID parameter into this URL. Finally, here we have converted observable of response to observable of JSON. Now we can call this delete employee function. Inside the click event for this button. So I'm gonna add a click event here. Click on delete. Into this function we have to pass the ID for the corresponding employee. So we can do this employee.employee ID. Now we have to define this on delete function inside this component here. On delete, here we have a parameter ID. It's of the type number. Then we just need to call the function from employee service class, this dot employee service dot delete employee, and then we will pass the ID here. Before this delete operation, we have to confirm the user whether user is sure about this delete operation, because delete operation is a loss of data. So we will confirm the operation by calling this function confirm. Are you sure to delete this record? If user click yes, then only we are going to do this delete operation. We will subscribe to the returned observable like this, subscribe. Inside that we will define another function like this. First of all, we will refresh the employee list, this dot employee service dot get employee list. Then we want to show the toaster notification. For that we have to inject toaster service into this employee list component like we have done inside employee component. For that we can do this, import toaster service from ngx-toastr. Now we have to define a private parameter inside the constructor. Toaster, it's of the type toaster service. Then we can do this dot toaster dot warning. Inside that we can show this warning message deleted successfully. The notification title will be something like this, employee register. Here we have a small change inside this delete employee function for port number. Let me copy paste here port number. Now we can save all of these modifications. And back to the application here. Now I am going to delete this record for James Smith. For that you can click on this delete button here. Are you sure to delete this record? Click on OK. So here we have deleted record for James Smith. Here we have the toaster message deleted successfully. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video, and for more awesome videos like this, please be subscribed to this channel .NET Mob. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.